Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a horror film, HELLHOLE. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in 1957 in Poland, where a baby boy with a scar on his chest is born during an eclipse. However, a father steals the baby to bring him to a church in Lower Silesia. He wants to kill the baby with a dagger because the baby is a spawn of evil due to its special scar. Fortunately, militia officers arrive on time to intervene and dispatch the father for his murderous intent. They save the baby soon. 30 years later, the baby boy grows up to be Marek. Marek is currently an undercover militia, whose task is to infiltrate and investigate the monastery church. He disguises himself as a priest to locate the 8 missing women that were rushed into the monastery because they were suspected of demonic possession. Marek arrives at the monastery, and the prior welcomes him to the monastery that he refers to as sanatorium. Their job as exorcism priests is to cast away the devil from a possessed individual. Afterward, the prior accompanies Marek to Father David for his luggage inspection because it's a standard requirement for all newcomers and visitors. During inspection, David finds Marek's cigarettes and confiscates it since it's prohibited inside the sanatorium. Next, the prior brings Marek to his new chamber for his temporary stay in the sanatorium. Overall, the sanatorium runs without electricity and phones. Everyone is expected to remain in their quarters at bedtime, and the evil one strongly manifests within the building. Before the prior leaves, he prays for Marek to enjoy his stay and that he may find his true calling in the sanatorium. When Marek's finally alone, he changes his clothes to a suitable outfit to blend in with the priests. Then, he opens a secret compartment in his luggage that contains a flashlight, a handgun, and a newspaper clipping about the missing women's case. On Marek's first day there, he dines together with all the priests. The food they eat has a strange texture, smell, and color, but Marek still forces himself to eat them. Next, he visits the cell facility, where the sanatorium keeps their possessed patients. While touring around the place, he catches a glimpse of the superior, who is convincing a blonde woman to eat. At the end of the day, Marek bathes himself. Meanwhile, the crucifix on the wall shakes uncontrollably due to the manifestation of the evil one in the building. On Marek's second day, there's a scheduled live exorcism of the blonde woman from yesterday. Before the ordeal, the prior briefs him that they only perform exorcism during the morning because it's when the devil is at its weakest. Moreover, they also encounter complex cases throughout the time that often lead to death. After their talk, every priest enters a room to initiate the exorcism. Dalit chains the blonde woman on a bed, and the superior prepares the video camera to record the ordeal. During the exorcism, the prior sprinkles holy water onto the blonde woman while praying in Latin to expel the demon possessing her. The chained blonde woman snarls at the prior and shakes until the bed rattles in place. She then growls at him, followed by a strong gust of wind that slaps his body. The prior then shows the crucifix to her, but it only bursts into flames. From afar, Marek keenly watches the prior still reciting the prayer despite what happened to the crucifix. Afterward, Marek returns to his chamber and cools down by splashing his face with water. Suddenly, the glass mirror in front of him shatters, and the closet doors in his bedroom open by themselves. However, Marek only ignores the unexplainable events and even closes the closet, unbothered. He then goes out in the corridor and discovers the prior's office. He's about to sneak inside, but David catches him and explains no one is allowed to enter without the prior's invitation. Marek acknowledges the warning and leaves to go to the dining area. During dinner, Marek spots a priest hesitating to eat the meat, but David walks up to him and whispers something in his ear to convince him to eat them. Marek then focuses back on his meal, but the moment he goes back to his chamber, he vomits everything. Just then, he senses a tooth stuck in between his gums, so he extracts it out and realizes it's not his. He examines the tooth, where a fly emerges and shortly flies away. At night, Marek sneaks into the prior's office to search for any evidence to prove their involvement in the missing women case. He discovers a secret archive containing all of the recorded tapes of their exorcism. He then watches the exorcism of the blonde woman and finds the whole thing suspicious. Therefore, to prove his suspicions, he returns to the room where they conducted the exorcism. Soon, he finds out that everything is a scam. He discovers an empty syringe used to drug the blonde woman under the bed, and the bed rattles by itself due to the pressure plate on the floor. A hidden lever to power the fan on the wall to produce a strong wind, and the crucifix includes a built-in lighter to burst into flame. Completely fazed by his discovery, Marek returns to his room to process everything. He then grabs the crucifix from the wall and hides it in a drawer. On Marek's third day, he attends a mass in the chapel. The prior then summons him on the stage to lead the penitential act in Latin. However, Marek doesn't know the Latin translation and fails, which forces the prior to assign the superior to lead the act instead. During dinner, he stops eating and gags at his meal after a gooey skin enters his mouth. He then rushes back to his chamber and finds the crucifix is back on the wall again, which means he's being watched by them. He then brings out his handgun, burns the newspaper clipping to prevent them from figuring out his real purpose, and then tries to escape. However, the gates are locked and he's stuck inside the sanatorium. He searches for a new exit, but he pauses on his track after catching the priest burying a coffin in the graveyard. Afterward, he visits the blonde woman's room, only to find it empty beside a blood droplet on the floor. Suddenly, the superior sneaks behind him and invites him to go to the chapel's confession stalls. While they're inside the stall, the superior reveals to Marek that the sanatorium is monitoring his every movement. He then advises him to minimize his snooping and questioning, because insubordination in the sanatorium is punished gravely. The superior even admits he learned them the hard way after attempting an escape from the monastery. The superior is about to leave until Marek discloses his true identity and purpose. It's revealed that the militia station learned all 8 missing women were sent to the sanatorium after being suspected of demonic possession via an anonymous tip. These women never came back, which led the militia to investigate discreetly. But the militia can't intervene in religious affairs and conduct a normal investigation because of what happened 30 years ago with the father who tried to kill the newborn baby. Therefore, the militia sent Marek under a guise to investigate the case. Afterward, Marek verifies if all the exorcism acts are scams, and the superior confirms that they are indeed fakes and are later sent to the Curia and Vatican in exchange for payments. Because the more they produce fake records of exorcism, the more payment they acquire. Unfortunately, the superior doesn't know what happens to the bodies afterward, but he knows that all the women went insane and later died during the exorcism. Moreover, he guesses the prior might have drugged the patients first, and then later buried their bodies in the courtyard. Marek then returns to his chamber, searching for any hidden surveillance equipment in his room. Once he confirms it's clean, he pushes the closet aside, where he discovers a hole in the wall. He inserts his hand into the hole and grabs a peculiar eyeball attached to a bone. Disgusted, Marek throws it away and vomits out dark substances. Just then, a couple of flies strangely emerge from the remnants of his vomit and fly away. The doorknob behind him uncontrollably rattles, and then he hallucinates, seeing himself in the form of his own vomit. Marek jolts back to reality and finds himself standing in front of the shattered mirror. He then destroys the eyeball on the floor out of frustration. At night, Marek goes to the graveyard to unbury the casket of the blonde woman, but he finds it empty the moment he opens it. Suddenly, Dawood sneaks behind him and bags his head until he collapses. Soon, Marek wakes up and finds himself tied to his bed while surrounded by the prior and Dawood. All of Marek's possessions are laid on the table, where they finally discover his true identity. Afterward, the prior forces Marek to consume all 4 portions of meat. Every time he refuses to eat, Dawood punches his face and then controls his mouth to chew the meat. Marek collapses due to consumption of the weird meat and shortly wakes up again to see Dawood is asleep. He quickly uses the chance to liberate himself from bondage, but Dawood wakes up and attacks him. Fortunately, Marek is fast enough to kill Dawood while minimizing the gunshot noise. He wants to know what meat he just ate, so he goes to the kitchen to investigate. He arrives at the kitchen, only to discover that the 7 missing women are amputated and harvested like animals in the freezer. Marek then realizes the priests are actually cannibals, who've been feeding him human flesh since his arrival at the sanatorium. Just then, the superior catches Marek snooping around, but he invites him to the library instead to reveal Marek's true identity. At the library, the superior presents and reads to Marek an ancient book written in Latin. The book says that the eclipse signifies the birth of the Chosen One. He needs to be slain the moment he's born, using a dagger and a prayer. However, if he isn't slain immediately, the Chosen One will eat 7 sinners and then drink the blood of the innocent. Once the ritual is complete, the Chosen One will evolve into a demon, and the world shall enter a new world order. Marek turns the page and recognizes the symbol on the paper is similar to the scar on his hairy chest. Therefore, Marek is indeed the Chosen One, but he denies the truth and claims to be a simple militia officer. Marek wants to escape, and the superior suggests using the underground passage as his escape route. However, Marek doubts if he can trust the superior, but the superior reveals his scars on the back to gain his trust, and that he intends for him to escape too. Soon, they travel together to the chapel, and then enter a tunnel through the altar. While they move forward, two priests unexpectedly strike Merrick on his head, and the superior only watches them bind him on the floor. It turns out the superior is never an ally in the first place. He's only pretending to empathize with him, to gain his trust and follow him in the underground. Later, Merrick wakes up to see himself tied to a cross. The prior explains he's the reason why Merrick ended up in the sanatorium, because the anonymous tip came from them. The priests in the sanatorium believe Satan and God get along, and they're seated side by side on the throne. They don't perceive Satan as evil, but rather the humans themselves, who need to be punished for their sins. For 800 years, their priesthood is just a facade to conceal the truth that they've been waiting for the arrival of the Chosen One. Once the ritual is complete, the Evil One will emerge from the well, and then enter the Chosen One's body to commence the new world order of chaos, where the only one who reigns is the Evil One, and these priests shall serve as his apostles. To finalize the ritual, they slit the blonde woman's throat for them to collect her blood. Afterward, they drink her blood, before forcing Merrick to drink it too. Next, they summon the Evil One for a couple of minutes, but nothing seems to happen. Merrick on the cross laughs out loud, as the priests are experiencing confusion. In the meantime, the superior and the prior discuss privately to wonder what they've been missing, because they've certainly murdered a virgin woman and 7 women who each committed a cardinal sin, and then fed them all to Merrick for his transformation. But nothing happened. Since their summon is a failure, the superior dismisses all the priests back to their chamber and advises them to forget whatever just happened earlier. The superior approaches Merrick, stabs him to death in anger, and then orders the priests to throw his body into the well. While everyone is in their chambers, the prior drowns himself with liquor, cigarettes, and music to forget the pain from failure. However, his life soon ends when the superior approaches him and suffocates him to death, because the superior believes the prior is to blame for their failure. Due to the superior's selfishness and malicious act, his action has finally provoked the Evil One to manifest physically in the sanatorium. Soon, a crucifix turns upside down to symbolize the Evil One's arrival. The next day, the priests burn all of the corpses in the courtyard to erase their track. Suddenly, the superior summons them to announce the prior's death. The superior squeezes out his crocodile tears and acts to be sad, but he's happy inside, since he succeeds the prior title. Meanwhile, a fly emerges from the prior's nostril and then buzzes off to reach Merrick's body in hell. Merrick wakes up from death after the fly lands on him, and soon his body transforms into the Evil One. At the chapel, the new prior chokes and freezes in place while leading a mass service dedicated to the late prior. However, the Evil One controls his body now, levitating him in the air while posing as a cross. Soon, the new prior's body morphs into millions of flies until he disappears completely in front of the priests. Ultimately, the Evil One emerges from the altar in the form of a horned sabbatical goat, known as Baphomet. The Evil One now controls everyone in the sanatorium, levitating them in the air while forming a cross, and then flips them upside down to depict his arrival. The movie ends with showing the signs of transformation as the Earth enters a new world order. Multiple veins wrap around the altar, and the barren tree in the courtyard sprouts flowers, signifying the resurrection of the dead and the death of the living. Moreover, the Jesus crucifix in the chapel miraculously moves to face the Evil One, who's standing on the stage. Meanwhile, the sky dims and rumbles as it shatters open to indicate the living presence of the Evil One on Earth. Now, the new world order begins, as the Earth becomes a living hellhole to the whole of humankind. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.